What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I am here to review a TV show that I watched recently, the Iron Man anime. A few years ago, Marvel did a couple of anime shows. They did one for Blade, one for Wolverine, one for the X-Men, and then one for Iron Man. And each one, I believe, was 12 episodes long. And in this particular DVD, you can watch it with the original Japanese audio if you so choose, or you can watch it with the American dub as I so chose. And the only voice on here that I'm familiar with is Adrian Pasdar, who was Nathan Petrelli on Heroes way back when, and he is also General Talbot in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But he is no stranger to the character of Tony Stark. It turns out that he has voiced Iron Man in several other cartoons before this one. So this story is basically Tony Stark comes to Japan to build a huge arc reactor invention thing that is going to give free, clean energy to everyone in Japan and possibly people in other parts of the world. That is his goal. And when he first comes to Japan, he is talking about retiring as Iron Man, and then he has built this new armor called the Dio armor that is basically going to replace him as Iron Man so that Tony Stark can quit being Iron Man. But then the Dio armor is stolen by the Zodiac organization, which has loose ties to Advanced Idea Mechanics, and then the rest of the series is Tony in Japan trying to deal with this organization trying to block him from building this arc reactor thing, and basically just trying to ruin his life. And then we find out that a few people are involved in this big scheme, and Tony has to stop them. This story is okay. It's not great. There are some things about it that just really bothered me and made me it prevented me from really enjoying this as much as I could have. Number one, you have two brand new characters that Tony Stark is trying to get in bed with, I guess. One of them is a female reporter who starts off acting like a 12-year-old girl. She does not act like she's even in the same sport as Tony Stark, but Tony at one point tries to kiss her and she slaps him. They have a couple of different meet cutes where like she falls on top of him at one point, and then he's like, oh, if you wanted a one-on-one, then you could have just asked, and then she slaps him again. I didn't really care for this character. She didn't really come alive for me. She starts off feeling very mousy, very timid, and then out of nowhere, suddenly she's like pulling these death-defying stunts trying to chase Tony Stark so that she can get an exclusive from him. It felt very inorganic that she suddenly makes this change in character where she becomes Lois Lane out of nowhere. And Tony Stark, I don't really know what he sees in this girl, but he's continuously flirting with her, and she kind of has a thing for him. And then she meets the other female character who's introduced in the series, who is a scientist working with Tony, who is trying to build the arc reactor thing. And Tony seems more interested in the scientist than he does in Reporter Girl, and the scientist is not in any way interested in Tony. And then at one point, the Reporter Girl asks the scientist, hey, are you and Tony Stark a thing? And the scientist says, you can do better than Tony Stark. And then I guess that convinces the girl that she doesn't need to go after Tony, because she doesn't for the rest of the series. But then the scientist woman, she's weird because she doesn't seem to have any interest in Tony at all. And then at one point she kisses him, and then she's like, no wait, that was a mistake, I don't need to do that. And then we find out, as I said earlier, that there are a few people in this story who, surprise, surprise, are working for Zodiac. And there's some slight spoilers here. If you don't want to be spoiled on this, turn off the video now. We find out that the scientist woman is actually being mind-controlled by Zodiac, so she's not willingly working for them. But that wasn't really surprising, because there's one episode where she and Tony both get kidnapped and they're dropped off on this deserted island somewhere. And you kind of know that something's going on with her because she lures him out of this building when he gets kidnapped. So you know that something's not right with her, but then they wait like 5 episodes to address the fact that she's being mind-controlled. So by the time they do reveal that, it's not really that surprising. Also, there's one episode that kind of gives us a slightly updated version of Tony's origin story that we've seen a few times before. If you have seen the Iron Man movie, the first Iron Man movie, it's pretty much the exact same origin, except that Yinsen is a little bit more hostile towards Tony in this than he was in that movie. In the movie, he meets Tony and he says, you know, I met you before, you were really wasted and drunk, and then they pretty much immediately they become friends and they start working on the Iron Man armor. Here, Yinsen is very mean to Tony. He saves Tony's life, and then he's like, you know what, I don't know if I'm going to help you build the Iron Man armor, so I'm going to flip a coin, and then tails, I'm going to kill you, heads, I'll help you build the Iron Man armor. And as soon as they start going into the origin, and Yinsen is kind of a jerk face to Tony, I was thinking, okay, Yinsen is going to be behind this whole Zodiac thing. And surprise, surprise, it turns out Yinsen is still alive, and he is behind the whole Zodiac thing. thing. This was, first of all, really easy to call. It was not in any way a surprise. It's kind of stupid because this, much like in the movie, Yinsen tells Tony, you need to turn your life around, and then Tony leaves, and then we don't know what happens next, but then Yinsen, he survives. He was gunned down, and I guess Tony didn't stop to check for his pulse or anything, and then this woman, comes into the cave, and she sees Yinsen has been shot, she nurses him back to health, and then he stays in this village with all these people, and then some Tony Stark weaponry comes in and destroys the village, and then Yinsen, I guess he has a mat on against Tony Stark because Stark's weapons killed all these people that he liked, and then he joins Zodiac. This is really dumb because it seems like Tony Stark, after the incident where he meets Yinsen, he goes back to America and he tries to turn his life around just like he did in the comics and in the movie. I don't want to say in the comics because that wasn't an element of the comics until much, much, much later. But it's weird that now, after he becomes Iron Man, Tony Stark's weapons are destroying cities. And it would have been fine if they had played this kind of like the movie, where they say that after Tony has made this sweeping declaration that he is no longer going to be dealing in weapons, that someone else in his company was continuing to do that on the side. In the movie, it was Obadiah Stane. If they had said that it was something like that, if Tony told Yinsen, listen, it took me a really long time to clean up my company, there were a lot of people who were trying to continue the work that I was doing before, if they had had something like that happen, then I would have been fine with this. But as is, it seems like Tony is a weapons dealer, he has a near-death experience, Yinsen says, you need to turn your life around, he becomes Iron Man, then he doesn't turn his life around, he continues dealing weapons, and then the weapons kill people that Yinsen likes, and then Yinsen, he tries to kill Tony Stark and drag his name through the mud. It's really weird the way it's handled, and you would think that with 12 half-hour episodes that they would have been able to have addressed this at some point, but they don't. Then Yinsen, he, out of nowhere, he does another heel-face turn, and he's back to being a good guy as he's dying, and he says, Tony, I was wrong this whole time, I shouldn't have joined Zodiac. Well, no duh, they're terrorists, you allegedly were a pacifist, no, you shouldn't have joined Zodiac. And then we find out that the Minister of Defense or something, who met with Tony at the very beginning of the series, turns out he's in Zodiac. Again, they played this like it's a big surprise, but it's not, because the episode that shows how Zodiac recruited Yinsen, we hear this voice recruiting Yinsen, and it's very obviously the Minister of Defense guy that we've been seeing sporadically through this series. And he doesn't really have any character motivations at all. He just wants to rule Japan. That's it. So greed, I guess, is enough character motivation for this guy. And then Tony stops this guy, he builds the arc reactor, and then the day is saved. I didn't really feel anything watching this. It's got some really nice animation. If you like anime and you like Marvel superheroes, you will probably really like this. It's much, much better. Marvel has done a couple of these animated shorts, like half-hour long stories. It's like Marvel Superheroes, Hulk and Iron Man, or Marvel Superheroes, Iron Man and Captain America. Those are mind-bogglingly awful, so this is much, much better than those, but it's still not good. It's not as good as, say, the live-action Iron Man movies. Even Iron Man 2, that I did not like, I would even say that it's better than this. This just doesn't really work for me. The villains are very flat. When they have motivations, their motivations don't really make any sense. Them just trying to stop Iron Man from making this thing that's going to give free energy to the people. This guy who wants to rule Japan, you would think that having a thing that gives free energy to the people would be something that he would want. He would be secretly trying to make sure that Tony succeeds, and then he could take over Japan, and he would have free energy for everybody, and it would be easier for him to, I don't know, control people or something like that. It just doesn't really work the way that they want it to work. And that's a shame, because I really like the idea of a decent Iron Man ongoing series outside of the comics. I would really love to see an ongoing Iron Man cartoon, not the one from the 90s, because it was awful, but something like that. Unfortunately, this was a limited thing, and it just didn't work, in my opinion. So if you guys like this anime series, let me know in the comments below. Tell me what you did like about it, and if you did not like it, or if you like this video, be sure to tell me that you did in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the future with some more videos. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.